So hey there guys, Erin here again, another What I Eat in a Day Wednesday. I do want to take a moment and apologize for not putting up a video this weekend. My video that I was gonna do kind of coincides with this one, so they're getting blended together. The keto guide that would have gone up this week was gonna be about how to eat socially, and so I'm gonna put that into this video. So I'm gonna go over my tips and advice for how I eat keto socially. Just keep in mind that this is how I go about doing it, and that, you know, it might be a little bit different in your area or situations may vary, but these are kind of my tips and advice for me and how I kind of deal with some of these situations. The first one is one that I actually dealt with on this day of eating. So it was a family event, and it was a family event in which I knew there would be no food there that I could consume and stay in ketosis. And so I made a very high fat, little bit of protein, little bit of carb smoothie in order to make sure that I was gonna be taken care of. I also did two things that I like to do on days in which I know I'm gonna be in a situation where I'm going to be tempted to eat. I made a very sweet and tempting breakfast, and then I knew I was going to eat a bigger dinner later on in the day, and so I made a dinner that would allow me to be very interested in it later on and want to make sure that I had enough room to eat this bigger dinner. And I split my carbs out throughout the day in order to accommodate kind of this sweeter breakfast that is different than my typical bulletproof and this kind of savory but still with some carbs dinner, so that way I knew I would be tempted to eat it later on and keep enough room in my stomach for it. So I just really did two real meals and then that smoothie in the middle of the day while I was at the party in order to kind of keep myself going. Typically for most of my family get-togethers, staying keto isn't going to be a problem, especially with like Christmas coming up and Thanksgiving. I know that there's going to be meat there. So I know I will at least have a meat option, a protein option that I can kind of go to. I also know that there will be at least a plainly dressed salad or some sort of like green bean type dish that doesn't have any starches or anything in it that I can go after. I just know how my family cooks and my extended family cooks, and I know that I can kind of rely on there being at least one meat and one vegetable that I can have. I also know that there'll be things like veggie trays, meat and cheese trays, and then some nuts that I could probably snack on. So I know going into it that there'll be options that will help me stay keto. So the thing that will typically tempt me is dessert. And there'll be, lots of cookies and lots of pies, maybe some chocolate bars, and just things that, I might want to pick on that are going to be full of sugar and full of things that are going to knock me out of ketosis. So when I go to these events, I just make a dessert. My family and my kind of culture will allow me to bring something along to share. I don't make a ton of it because I know most people are going to be tempted by the same treats, and probably, because it's the holidays, they'll just go ahead and have one. But if I make something that is going to be keto friendly and I know I have it, I don't feel like I'm missing out. I feel like I've got that sweet treat, that thing that's going to keep me happy, that will keep me keto. And if you don't bake and you don't want to bring anything like that, just bring some chocolate. Bring that, put that in your pocket, put it in your jacket pocket, put it in your purse, put it wherever, and just have that as something that you can bite on later on, so that you do get that feeling of sweetness without going for the big dessert. Even if on these days and in these situations you eat more carbs than you normally would, if you're eating more carbs and it's still, under a certain amount, it's better than if you just cheated and went off and went crazy. I would rather have a slightly higher carb day and not cheat. That just works better for me. And so that's usually what I will try to do in order to avoid the temptation. So for restaurants, I will typically look up the menu ahead of time. Most of the time for restaurants, I will know that I'm going to be going to one with some advance notice. If I don't, then I will pull up my phone and I will look up the menu while I'm waiting in line at the restaurant or going to it, just to see if there's anything keto friendly. Most all restaurants nowadays have their menus online that you can look at and kind of view, and so that's something I very often do before going, so that way I have a game plan. I know what is and isn't keto friendly. If I have a lot of advance notice, I might call the restaurant and ask what kind of substitutions can be made because I'm on a diet. Keep in mind that gluten-free people, vegan people, vegetarians have been modifying meals in order to fit their diets for a very long time, and so there's really no shame in just kind of trying to figure out what would and wouldn't work for you. So just you know, go in with it with that mindset. Most restaurants now you can replace French fries with a side salad, so that's one of my favorite options, or you can replace it with steamed vegetables, so I usually try to do that. My favorite type of restaurants to personally eat at are like tapas or small plate bars as well as wine bars. A lot of these places, you know, you can cobble and put together various different small plates in order to get a meal. So it's very easy to, you know, pick a lot of little things and then stay keto friendly. Wine bars are my favorite because typically in order to kind of set off or pair with the wine, they'll do a lot of like small plates that include meats and cheeses and olives and nuts. And these are all great keto friendly options. And so my husband and I, if we do go out on a date and I don't cook for us, which is kind of rare, we will go to like a wine bar and we will get a bunch of small plates of keto-friendly treats and then maybe split some wine. So yeah, that's kind of typically how I approach all the various social situations. If there is something at work where there's like food put out, I usually try to keep that in mind ahead of time, and I will bring like a big bulletproof coffee that I can sip on and just continue to be social. I mean, you can always just say like, I'm not hungry. No one's gonna ever really try to force food down your throat. For me, on this day where I was going to go to a social event and there was gonna be a meal there that I could not eat, so I went ahead and had a very sweet treated breakfast. I made keto French toast. That bread that I cooked at the beginning of the video, I just very thinly sliced it into strips and then fried it in some coconut oil on the outsides just to crisp it, and then I topped it with coconut manna, which to me is nature's frosting. It's the best thing in the world. And it just melted on top of that, and then I just sprinkled some more pumpkin pie spice on it and just enjoyed that. So that was kind of my treat in the morning. So I went into dinner knowing that, and I made sure that my dinner was more savory and it had some things that were maybe a little bit starchy, so that way I felt like I got some little starchy type treats later on in the day. So anyways, with all that being said, here's what I ended up making for dinner. Just keep in mind that I was able to get this all to work into my net carbs for the day, mainly because I ended up only really eating 2 meals. Alright, so for dinner I made porchetta, which is just a pork shoulder that is well seasoned, so it's just covered in tons of different seasoning, as you can see. I put it on a wire rack above a baking pan, so that way the drippings would fall below and collect. And I cooked it at 450 degrees for about 30 minutes initially, and then I dropped the temperature later on to 325 and cooked it for an additional 2 hours. So along with the porchetta, I made some parsnip chips. This is 3 whole parsnips. I cut it up into thin slices. We did not eat all of this parsnip at this meal, but saved some for later on to enjoy as chips. So I cut these into thin slices. I covered it with some avocado oil. You could use a different oil if you wanted to, but I made sure that they were all covered. And then I laid them out on a baking sheet and put them in the oven for 25 minutes at 325 degrees. The porchetta was still in the oven at this point, and so I just kept it at that temperature. Normally I would cook it a little bit higher, approximately 375 for about 25 minutes would normally get it done. So I did end up having to cook these longer since they were cooked at a lower heat. So while those were cooking, I went ahead and made a salad. So I chopped up some mushroom, and then I used this hazelnut oil that we had purchased. Normally I would use an avocado or an olive oil to make this dressing, and so if you don't have hazelnut oil, you can completely use one of those in order to make it. And I did 1/4 cup of the oil, and then 1/8 of a cup of the apple cider vinegar. I also did 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, and approximately a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. I particularly like this brand because it only has 2 grams of sugar per tablespoon, and so it's one of the only low-carb balsamic vinegars that I've been able to find. So I blended that all together, tossed in the mushrooms, and then I got some baby spinach and tossed that in as well. I did about 2 cups per serving of the baby spinach, and then just kind of tossed that in there. As you can see, it's kind of a wetter dressing, and I did that intentionally in order for it to be kind of a gravy or a sauce on the plate, so that way I could slide the parsnip chips in it if I wanted to, or some of the meat once it was done. So when the parsnip chips were done, they came out of the oven, they were crisp and, you know, just a little burned on some of the edges, which is the way I kind of like potato chips to be. So I took them out and then put them in a mixture of apple cider vinegar, dill, salt, and pepper, so that they would have that kind of sea salt and dill taste. So when the porchetta was ready to come out of the oven, I did let it rest for a few minutes, about 10 minutes in total. Typically I'll rest meats anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes when they're kind of cooked like this, so that way the moisture gets back into it and it becomes that delicious juicy piece of meat. So I did 2 slices as a serving for this meal. And then I did about 75 grams of the parsnip chips. That ends up being about 10 net carbs in total. So a little bit more high carb, but you know, you don't have to feel deprived on keto. There's ways to go around it. And like I said, I knew I wanted something that was kind of a treat after going to that party and avoiding all the delicious food that was there and all the delicious treats. So this was kind of my reward meal for staying good on keto. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that, you know, the information about how to eat socially as well as seeing kind of what I eat in a day is helpful for you guys. I really want to make sure that these videos do provide you guys with a lot of great information, good recipes, and good tips for how I'm able to stay keto. So if you guys did enjoy this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up because that does really support my channel and it does communicate to me that I am putting out videos that you guys are enjoying and they're helping you as you go along in your own journey. So until next time, I hope everything's going great in your world and I will see you guys later. Bye!